Hello, I'm Coach Robert Wick, and if you've been following on YouTube, thank you. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm a coach. I work with high-end, highly successful people to help them break out of that repetitive cycle of recovery, that relapse behavior. I specialize in using a neuro-restorative brain coaching process that helps us and helps you rewire that inner voice, right? Sometimes has been your worst enemy. Anyway, I'm excited this morning. Going to be joined, or I am joined by Coach Maggie, a therapist who has a long history of working with similar individuals, but also a unique expertise in working with the family unit that often is very important in the recovery process and sometimes in the active process of those suffering with an active addiction. So stay tuned, look forward, and let's welcome therapist Maggie. You know, the first person I started working with reached out to me, Maggie, at one of these Friday afternoon relapse prevention meetings.
Okay.
And he was sitting there as a patient. And I just attend, and then if the therapist thinks I can add something of value, they'll say, you know, Bob, based on your experience, what do you think? And after the second week, this fellow approached me at the end of the meeting, and he said, he likes to use the word tribe, describing us, and he says, you're a member of my tribe, and I like the vibe you give off, and I'm heading back home, but I'll be back in about a month, and I'd like to spend some time with you and start doing some work with you. So, you know, okay, fine, great. And then the first time we sat down, you know, we're sitting in his house on the ocean in Highland Beach, right? Of course. And I'm trying to feel him out a little bit, like what brought you to the point where you think you need my assistance as a coach? You know, what is it that you're really struggling with?
Sure.
And it was kind of the opening dialogue, right? And he paused for a long time. And I think what it was, you know, for a lot of people, he didn't want to say he needed help because that's a sign of weakness and given all he's accomplished, blah, blah, blah. Yes. But once he started talking, for the balance of the next 2 hours, Maggie, I listened 95% of the time.
Wonderful.
And just let him
just had to prime the pump a little,
talk. And I wondered, do you experience that? And the point I'm getting to is, I think a lot of what they're struggling with, what they're looking for, is inside of them. And if I can get them comfortable and get a dialogue going, I felt like that day I just sat back and let them talk.
You know, my son, he's 22, and he wants to be a therapist. He was sitting in a course recently, and they were talking about the importance of the relationship versus the technique. And I for what it's worth, land squarely in you have to know what you're doing, but the relationship is everything. Without the relationship, you really have nothing. But the teacher said to the class, when is the last time you have had anybody sit with you and completely focus on you for an hour with complete dedicated interest? And just that is something that does not happen to most people in day-to-day life, even with your partner, to just have someone really locked in.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes. They can feel your interest is genuine and authentic, and they trust you, and it kind of opens the floodgates. So that's a common experience, and that's a very good sign if that's what you're experiencing.
It's exactly what I'm experiencing, because it's happened, you know, subsequent to that. And I find myself at the end of the time we spend together that I had listened probably 95% of the time.
That's great. That's great.
And, you know, asked the right question to get them going. And then I think their confidence level builds up. In the questions that I've been asked from people that I'm working with, or perhaps hoping to work with, maybe they're feeling me out right now or whatever.
Sure.
I find a lot of my answers to questions they pose to me my answers are based on my personal experience, what I went through in my 30 plus years of, active alcoholism, AA meetings, all the different treatment centers, yada, yada, yada. And then ultimately what I experienced at Ocean Drive, and then subsequent to that, about 4 years later, the personal coaching process I went through. And I guess my question is, well, that's the real answer I can give based on my personal experience. Do you think that resonates well with a client, or are they looking for the more, tell me about the degrees you have in your education and give me more of a professional answer, if that makes sense?
Sure. And again, I'm just going off of my own experience. There used to be a school of thought, and they used to train therapists that you need to be, and coaches for that matter, kind of a blank slate. That they lie on the couch, so to speak, and they talk to you, and you give nothing of yourself. For most human beings, that is profoundly unsettling.
Yeah.
To talk to someone and get no facial expression, get nothing of them from them.
Yeah.
So when certainly, I probably self-disclose more than your average therapist, I do it ethically, meaning I do it with a purpose. It's not just because I feel like telling a story. But I have found, yes, that's an instant join with other people. It's usually universally disarming, and people are interested in your experience as opposed to what is the textbook answer. So certainly weave that in, and if their experience is very differently, you'll pivot as needed. But yes, I think sharing your personal story is really powerful.
Well, I'm comfortable doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, besides getting that CCAR thing that I got, whatever that course,
Yes.
that degree, I don't have the professional training that you have gone through as a professional therapist. That doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I'm
Right.
comfortable speaking from, hey, here's what worked for me kind of thing. But one of the questions, one of the thoughts in these early discussions is getting a sense from the patient whether they truly believe they have the ability to overcome what it is they're dealing with, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, all those things. Whether they believe it inside of them, or like in my case, all the years at Hanley and Passages before I got to Ocean Drive, I was doing it to appease my wife and my children. My children, my twin daughters are 49, so they were adult children at the time even. And I was going through all this just to quiet the noise. I really wasn't doing it because Bob Wick had an earnest desire to get and remain sober, and had the belief inside of me that I had the ability to do so. And so I'm curious, how do you go about getting a sense with someone
Right.
that they believe in
Well,
themselves?
and I think the desire to change has to be there, and that I cannot do for them. However, I have found that even if they don't believe it, if I do, that can help tip someone over. So it's almost like people can draw from my strength or draw from the belief that I have in them until they can internalize it as their own. So again, the desire, we can't manufacture, we can't force. We've all seen
Right.
that a million times when people are strong-armed into recovery, or really most things in life in general. But sometimes they do have this wavering. I've had people say to me countless times a version of, do you really think I could? Do you really think I can do it?
Yeah.
And they just need to hear, and it's authentic, like everything I do, they just need to hear that I do think they can do it, and that we're in it with them.
My sense of the Maggie I know is you're not saying to anybody anything that they want to hear. You're saying what they need to hear, and you're speaking
I still
truthfully.
have to say that all the time. Now's the time when I have to say what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Yeah. And most people really rise to that. And I frame it that way as it's honorable and courageous to be in a place where you're willing to hear what you need to hear, knowing it's probably not what you want to hear.
And I've experienced that where I've had somebody say to me a day or a week later, hey, Bob, remember when we were talking and you said, and to be honest, Bob, you really pissed me off at that time.
Yeah, I've
And
heard that. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, but I don't think we're working together for me to make you feel wanted and
Right.
loved and cozy. Sometimes, okay, yeah, okay. It was interesting.
And it's to me it's an act of respect to do that, to be, because it's a risk for me too. I think people think because I'm maybe not showing that I'm nervous, my heart's always pounding. Like we've said several times, a lot of people that we work with are very powerful and quite intimidating. And so to kind of get myself to say something that I know is necessary and possibly will help them save their lives, I have to do it. But it doesn't mean my heart rate doesn't go up.
Yeah,
And I sweat a little bit. I always feel a little nervous doing it, but it's a necessary risk. And I think people feel respected when we're willing to say those hard things and take that risk.
yeah. In the beginning, I asked this one fellow, that the one that reached out to me, he was a current patient, whatever. And I said, besides feeling a vibe or whatever, what else specifically wanted you to speak with me or meet with me? And he commented, he said, in these meetings when you're asked your opinion or a question or whatever, you don't hesitate. It just comes out exactly what you honestly are thinking. And he goes, I don't get the
Uh,
sense that you're couching.
right.
You're,
You're not being strategic. You're
no,
just
not at
being,
all. And I always had to be in business,
yeah,
but
sure.
in this part of my life and working with other people, well, I learned it going through my own work that I did at Ocean Drive as an active patient and as an active alcoholic is you got to be honest with yourself, Bob, whether you want to hear it or not. The days of pretending that, everything is fine.
Yeah.
I remember I had a therapist tell me once, he goes, you sound like the the fair weather man. Every time I ask you how you doing, yeah, everything's fine. I'm okay. And,
Yeah.
and he says, really, why are you sitting in a treatment center then?
You can't be can't be all rainbows if that's the case.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Two areas I was curious about.
Sure.
I'll talk about the neuro brain part first, and then the second, an area that I need to learn more about, and that's the role, the impact of the family with these people that are dealing with
Okay.
whatever they do, because I don't know of that. But
Okay.
especially because of the woman that's sitting in the room next to me,
Yeah.
just by simple osmosis, I've come to learn a lot about the impact of the brain, the power of neuroplasticity and creating the new neural pathways. And the biggest impact for me at Ocean Drive was, I don't know if I was aware of it, but I was re-scripting that inner voice that
Uh,
my dinner companion the other night, he went through Ocean Drive, not for substance, but for mental health.
mm-hmm.
And he'll talk about that inner voice that can come from
Yes.
that
Yes.
that 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 dark place inside our head, and if we can learn how to re-script that voice, which I experienced personally. My old inner voice was the Saturday Night Live Gilda Radner, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, people really don't like you.
Yes.
And I think I came to believe that. That voice today is totally different.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Whatever,
Yeah.
But so all around the neuro side of that, do you touch on that in your practice, in your work with people?
I do. I tend to be less cognitive. It depends on what's happening. So, absolutely, identifying the way people speak to themselves and helping them work on changing that is really critical. I usually start with helping them understand whose voice that is and how it got there, and how maybe at one time it was actually helpful and now it is not. It may have once
Yeah.
been adaptive when they were a child and they may have even needed that to survive, but now berating yourself or speaking to yourself that way is no longer serving you at all. So yeah, that definitely comes up. And it's really true that whatever people hear, you tend to believe if you hear it enough. I've worked with titans of industry that would go home to horribly abusive relationships and believe every word that person was saying, despite all the outer success and everything else. If you hear it enough,
Yeah.
you will believe it, good or bad.
Well, yeah, I guess for me now personally, I'm conscious of it.
Yes.
So,
So you hear it. Yeah.
if somebody's saying something to me negative, how I process it or take it in, or, that inner voice in my head still likes to whisper to me sometimes in a dangerous or negative way. And at least now I can be aware of it, conscious of it, and say, okay, time out.
Right.
You know where you're headed. I need to be aware. Again, this fellow I had dinner with the other night, we sat down. We've only had dinner together 3 or 4 occasions over the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it started out by him texting me one day saying, hey, by the way, Bob, are you available for dinner? And I was taken back just knowing who he was or what I thought I knew about him, the perception I had heard
Sure.
from
Yeah.
what other people said. And that dinner and the dinner the other night, where it came about, he's got a cousin that he referred him to Ocean Drive, who's there right now. And I had met her in that Friday afternoon relapse. And anyway, she commented to him the following day, they were together for a meal. And yeah, this guy Bob Wick was in here, and he was talking about how one of our alumni had given him this analogy of the light and dark forces of the Jedi in the Star Wars movie, and that inner voice. And in the meeting, she looked up at me and she goes, was that alumni who told you this? Was his name so-and-so? And I said, yeah, it's a lovely Friday afternoon, isn't it? I wasn't going to answer the question in
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
So he texted me and he said, I had lunch with my cousin, and she relayed, how she figured out I was the alumni that gave you this analogy. And at the end, he said, oh, by the way, are you available for dinner Thursday night? And it struck me because this person his company's located North America, Australia. I mean, he does a lot of traveling. And I said, sure, I'd love to have dinner with you. And he comes into the restaurant. I was already seated there. And he immediately, without hesitation, started talking about the family issues he was dealing with, spouse, children, whatever. And that kind of carried the first half hour, 45 minutes of the conversation. And I share that with you leading up to the family. I was a good listener, and I think he just needed to talk it out. And we were having, this is a fellow, when you talk to him, it's kind of like Elon Musk, he'll talk to you, but his eyes are going in 20 different directions.
Right. Yeah.
And he's on the 5th thought down the road that he's going to get to while he's talking to you about the current thought.
Right.
And I noticed while he was speaking, Maggie, our eyes were locked. I mean, they were, which was unusual
Really
for
dialed
him.
in. Yeah.
And the difficulty I had with it, and I don't think he knows I was uncomfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
I found out the next day. I think he got out of that. He was so grateful, So I think I listened well and intently and truly heard him. But when he was talking about the spouse and the children, and it's a serious spousal issue and communication and all that. And again, he's not dealing with substance abuse, but it's part of his, it's his life. I didn't really know how to react or comment, because for me, the family side of it is I got divorced after 40 years of marriage the year before I came to Ocean Drive.
Right.
And that was the necessary stepping stone. As difficult as that was, that's what
Yes.
I needed. And I couldn't relate to the family discussion because some of the children, one of the older sons is involved in this trauma.
Okay.
And it was difficult for me to comment or say anything.
Families with regard to substance use specifically, it's almost always multi-generational patterns, but what almost all
Yeah.
families do in an effort to help is essentially everything wrong. Things that would help in any other circumstance, if it was a medical issue, if there was I don't know, a financial crisis, if there was a hurricane, these things that people do to swoop in and help would be helpful and supportive. Addiction stands everything on its head. So the family, in their usually
Yeah.
complete terror, attempt to help, and what they end up doing to help makes it worse. It enables, it creates
Yeah.
codependence, it pushes them away, all these things that we see. So what I know for sure is that the family inadvertently has started to actually support addiction. They think they're doing the opposite. They're supporting addiction. If I can shift that family system to support health and not addiction, the prognosis goes up exponentially for that person. It takes work. There's
Yeah.
a parallel process is a very real thing. And what I tell families as a rule is all you can do is your own work. You can't save them, you can't fix them, you can't stop it, you have to do your own work to figure out kind of how, your part in how we got here, or how you've been inadvertently supporting addiction, so that we can do this differently. It is difficult, it is scary, there's so much fear involved. A lot of times families view me like a mechanic, like they're going to wheel their loved one in and I'm going to get some tools and fix them and
Yeah.
roll them right back out all
I'll
shiny, and
fix
they don't
them.
have to do with it. I'll fix them,
Yeah.
and then it'll all be fine.
Yeah.
So people don't, people aren't terribly excited to hear that a lot of times, that they have to do some work also. But again, the prognosis goes up amazingly if I can treat the family. So, and that's really just how I practice in general. The more information I can get from relevant people, the better. I always get a bigger, fuller picture if I can involve other people in what's happening.
And thank you. That's good advice for me going forward. And I'm asking questions of you. Is there anything on your mind that you'd like to share or discuss during this time together?
I'm sure I will. Let's keep talking. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, a quick question off the top of my head. Do you practice with people? Do you coach people only locally? Does this stretch into they could be international or across the country? Does location matter?
No, it doesn't matter. In practice, it's only been so far local
Mm-hmm.
because they've been people coming out of Ocean Drive, either currently or they're alumni.
Okay.
But the ability to do it virtually, I'm prepared for that. That's more for the technical help I've received from Sergio.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also spent a fair amount of time building the specific questions that I want to use in a coaching relationship with someone, not questions somebody's told me to, whatever, the ones I think are appropriate in a general pattern to be prepared to do it virtually,
Yes.
beginning with the first phone conversation.
Okay.
And that was a curiosity question I had for you.
Yes.
If I'm meeting somebody and they kind of fit the avatar, if you will, that Sergio and I put together, they are more than likely a chronic relapser. They have been through a treatment center of some form in the past. And I say that because those are the people that I'm specifically targeting, because that's who I can
Okay.
relate to the best based on my experience. The,
Okay.
the chronic relapser, not the
Right.
person for the,
I know what I wanted to ask. If we think about, all the people that we see relapse repeatedly, and we think about kind of the pillars of a good recovery program. So we have accountability, we have self-care, we have spiritual aspect, we have purpose and passion, and we have community.
Yep.
Community is what people fight me on the most, almost as a rule. I wanted to see if that was your experience as well. And this is I hear a lot of I'm not doing any 12 step. I don't need that. I have friends. I don't, I just need you. So people tend to kick and scream about community in my experience, and it just doesn't work without it. Not long term anyway, in my experience.
And my response to that is usually pretty harsh because I have experienced it. And it
Yes.
begins with this lack of community, doing everything on your own. How well has it served you? Is that maybe part of the reason we're sitting here today talking
Right.
one-on-one?
Yeah.
Because you're so strong and successful, you don't need the community, you don't need the other people. I can do this on my own, I got it.
Hmm.
And I said, truth be told, the other part, you don't want community because you don't want anybody to think you need help. And God forbid you should need help. That's a sign of weakness, and you're King
Right.
Bob. You can't have a chink in your armor, and you need to get over that. So I respond
Yeah.
strongly.
Just straight at it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I hope we can get this, I hope we can invert kind of public opinion about vulnerability and needing help. I mean, if you look at, if you see toddlers, 2-year-old kids, and one smacks the other one, the first thing the one who's smacked does is usually run away. They don't want to have to look at what they did. They hurt their little friend. You
yeah,
have to kind of walk them over,
yeah.
say you're sorry to little Johnny. Look, you hurt him. He has a mark. That is very uncomfortable for humans to 82. The vulnerable things actually require more strength. It's really, to me, the opposite. It is not weakness. Anybody can have a tantrum and yell and all that stuff, saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I need help, I don't know how to do this. Those are the things that require strength because it's terrifying, it's vulnerable. So I hope eventually we can invert that perspective because it's dated and it's just not helping anyone at this point. Now, I will say a lot of business people think that I'm implying that they should go into business meetings and start crying indiscriminately when that is not what I mean. Yeah. I can't do that. I can't go around. Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
it's funny. This guy I had dinner with the other night, he was beginning some travel today, actually, to some of his offices in North America and then going over to Australia. And I said, with all the crap you got going on in your life right now and what's going on at home, why do you have to do this? And he says, well, I have to
Right.
show up and be the flag waver, right? And I
Oh,
said,
okay.
so you have to show up and encourage all your people and pretend everything is great with
Right.
you. I almost said his first name. And I
Yeah.
said, that's got to be, you're putting on this air of everything's wonderful. And I
Sure.
understand the business need to do that. I get it. But God forbid some of your employees might think you're real and
Yeah.
dealing with real life things. And he kind of looked back at me at dinner and he was a little offended, I think a little pissed off at first. And then he thought about it. He said, yeah, I have to put on that air, but maybe what's necessarily wrong if people get a sense that I'm as real as they are. And he was kind of trying to process it
Mm-hmm.
in his high spinning, huge brain. And so it was interesting to watch him go through that. When I sit in those Friday meetings, I always make the comment that you're sitting here on a Friday afternoon as a patient. Do you know are you aware of how much courage it took for you to walk through the
Oh,
front door?
yeah.
And I always ask in the group, how many of you are here in treatment for the first time? Rarely is it the majority. I don't know if it's ever, these
Wow.
are all
Yeah.
people coming back. But the other piece I wanted to ask you about, that I talked to them about, I said, you might think the biggest challenge is walking through the front door. I got to tell you, my biggest experience, my biggest challenge was when I walked through the front door of my home when I left
Right.
after 30 days.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you know, they're taking the 30-day ocean drive to 60 days.
Good,
Maddie's
because
back. I had
30
never.
days is just enough to get your, maybe a little of your brain chemistry recalibrated. Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't even met them until they've been there for 30 days in some
I
ways.
had never met Maddie, and she's back now as the clinical
Yeah.
director. So I met her right after this meeting this prior Friday, and she said, "Yeah, I'm still in a 60-day program. What do you think?" I said, "Are you kidding me? That somebody? Yeah, I mean, 30 days. You're just getting your feet wet in a lot of
Yes.
cases." But what I was leading up to was talking to them, and in your experience with the people that are coming out of the treatment, and when they get home and they have to start their life over, I find that for me, my initial conversations is a little bit off track from the active coaching. But when you go through all your therapy here and you talk about all your trauma and you've dealt with all these things and you walk in the front door, and that day you don't have a therapy meeting, you don't have a group meeting, and by God, nobody's going to cook you dinner, what the hell do you do? Are you thinking about, are you preparing about how you're going to sustain yourself? And that's a question I ask with people that I work with. What are you doing today to sustain yourself, to give yourself a sense of fulfillment versus just existing and getting through the day?
Hmm.
And I never really get a clear answer when I ask that. I get a moment of pause.
Yeah, and I think that is such a critical part of treatment. I mean, in my experience, if people go somewhere for 30 days with no gradual transition and no very, very clear plan, they face plant. And,
Yeah,
especially when I was working with a lot of people, younger people with opiates, they would just go home and overdose immediately. Their tolerance would be gone. They would use this,
like that.
so that is, oh yeah, it is a disaster. If people don't have a very clear plan and hopefully something very gradual as far as so they go maybe from inpatient and then maybe they do intensive outpatient and then they go to outpatient with a coach that they're seeing many times a week and therapy twice a week and SoberLink, and there just has to be a lot of measures in place to help people off ramp out of that intensive therapy bubble. They just have not had no real world practice yet. And it's,
Yeah,
to me, a complete setup just to have wave at somebody and have them go home to an empty house or with an untreated family and expect that they're going to do okay. I mean, in those cases, that's when you hear family members say things like, well, can't you just have one, to their loved one who just got out of rehab for alcohol? Aren't you fine now? Can't you just, they just don't know. So to
yeah.
me, that is a huge disservice when someone
Okay.
goes somewhere for 30 days and there's not a very thorough plan for after.
Thank you for reinforcing that. Yeah, when I left Karen, I had the home in Delray that everybody used to come by with the boat and all that shit.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
opened the front door, and I'm like, "There's nobody here."
Oh
I've been
God,
divorced a
that must have
year or
been
whatever.
so, yeah,
Except,
intimidating.
except sitting there looking up at me, I had a white golden retriever. Her
Uh-huh.
name was Ella, and those beautiful eyes,
Oh yeah.
and just looking at it up at me like, "I'm here, honey."
Dogs are, yeah, dogs.
That,
Yeah,
that
I'm
was my
surprised there
saving moment.
aren't therapy dogs that are trained specifically for recovery. Maybe there's a business idea in there for us. Yeah, that can sense when someone's struggling.
Sergio has the ability to edit this, so it will be in a format that we'll both be proud to put out on YouTube and everything.
Okay.
What is there that we haven't discussed that somebody watching this video, seeing Maggie, you would want to be discussing or have them hear from you?
Sure. So this is going to be probably a bit of a curveball. I can't remember. I think we maybe addressed it briefly when we've spoken before, but I just did a year-long, extremely grueling certification in psychedelic assisted therapy, which
Yes.
many people in the recovery community kind of, and everyone should be No one should be barreling toward this without thought. So let me say that everyone should be looking at this with a critical eye and getting a lot of information about whether this would be an appropriate modality. But the implications for helping people with addiction are massive, and it's really exciting. So I would encourage people to start reading the research, particularly coming out of Johns Hopkins about it. Start maybe listening to anecdotal evidence that there is online, but it's been really, really just amazing to be with people through that process and to see what happens. You mentioned neuroplasticity when we were speaking before.
Yes.
There is, and it's so fascinating. I just sat with someone on their psychedelic journey. I don't administer anything, but sat with them, and then we were doing integration. And he said for the first time in like 15 years, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I was proud of myself, which was just everything.
Wow.
So yeah, really, he's been so dedicated in doing affirmations 4 and 5 times a day and looking at ways he can build in light and levity and joy into his life. So he's really taking advantage of the post 2-week hyperneuroplasticity part. So yeah, that's really what I have that's new. And I just really love with what you're doing, what I'm doing, how creative I think we are able to be now. I think the only way COVID helped us was to open up some, make virtual communication so much more mainstream. But I can really at this point do anything I want as long as it's ethical and legal. I can travel to people and do intensive coaching. They come to me. I can pull in other providers. I can pull in you. I can pull in Dr. Krantz. I can pull in providers and really give people a tailored, individualized program of care. And it's really fun to work with other people. That's the only thing I miss about private practice. So I've been, as introverted as I am, tried to be pretty deliberate about working with coworkers that I respect. It's fun.
Okay. Saturday afternoon now.
To talk with you. That was really fun, and I really appreciate you including me. I hope I didn't botch it too severely.
Other way around. I'm the one getting going. You're the established coach, so thank you for sharing.